Okay. We are doing number 118, The Valley of Mexico from the Hillside of Santa Isabel. Um, what you want to make sure that you do is, why is it being like this? Let me move this. Maybe that'll make a difference. Is to not confuse Velasco, right, with Velasquez, who is the painter of who's Velasquez the painter of? Las Meninas, right? I'm assuming if you've already watched the video, if you have not already watched the video, you need to do that first, the Khan Academy video. I'm going to add a few things to what they've said. Really, this piece should remind you of another piece that we have studied already. What piece is it reminding you of? You should be thinking of, oh my goodness, why isn't this working? Here we go. Yes, the oxbow. It's very similar, right? We can see the similarities in the highlighting of the landscape and the dramatic meteorological events with the weather. And really, just like the oxbow was about national identity with manifest destiny in the United States, the Valley of Mexico is going to does the same something similar in terms of establishing national identity. And because Mexico is a relatively new, or it's gained its independence relatively recently, and so, part of what countries may do or cultures may do when they establish their independence in order to assert their identity is to uh, promote a national style in art. And unlike in the United States, because Mexico chooses to create an academy. So they are following the kind of the European tradition of the academy. The United States does not have a formal academy, but Mexico does. And because Mexico does, we see this is made in 1882. This is made in 1836, which I know is only 50 years, but I'm sure you've been able to tell thus far from this section of our curriculum that things move extremely quickly in the 19th century. Things change very fast due to technological innovations, which spur on cultural changes. And with those very quick cultural changes come changes in style. So, what's being done here in 1882 in Mexico is calling back to older traditions of romanticism, mostly, I would say. And I know it wasn't that long ago that we did romanticism, but again, 19th century moves very quickly. And so, romanticism, I wouldn't say it's over, but there are other styles that have come into play. You saw that already with the Monet piece. So I mention all this because what I'm going to come back to that. Because what Mexico is doing through the creation of the academy is to assert that identity, and they want to assert an identity that is going to be very stable and promote a certain sense of reliability and and uh, and heft. And because of that, they're not going to promote a style of art that is really innovative. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, that's not to say that I don't like this piece. I like this piece very much, but it's not about what I like. It's about what's going on in the art world. So, like I said, this piece is really more of a calls back more on romantic traditions than something more innovative that we'll see with impressionism. But it's a different place, right? And so we'll see those forces work differently in Mexico. So the question here is, what other works originating in the indigenous Americas, Mexico, New Spain should we think about when we consider this work? The article, or excuse me, the Khan Academy video already indicated some of that. Maybe you can also think of other works as well. That's probably going to be your question for this piece. So just a little bit of background, so context. So 1821, we have the War of Independence from Spain. And as I've said, after they become independent, Mexico aims to establish its identity through artistic endeavors. The name of the academy was the Royal Academy of San Carlos. And as you recall from the video that you watched from Khan Academy, the person who instructed Velasco, or was a major teacher at this Royal Academy, was an Italian landscape painter. So again, calling back to that older European tradition in order to establish their validity as an independent nation, as their own culture, which I know might seem somewhat contradictory, but it makes sense if you think about it. You don't want to do something totally new and untested when establishing your new identity, because you're a nation and you want to show that you are stable. So like I said, they're teaching neoclassical, and I'm really emphasizing the romantic styles, right? And so we have here a piece that develops a tradition of national landscape painting. And you already know that he unites pre-Hispanic symbols and contemporary national sentiments here. So we also say about this piece is that it's kind of a reworking of an older tradition of what we call pastoral idyls. And in a pastoral idyll, you kind of have this idealized landscape with life is beautiful and daily life is wonderful and united with nature. It's a romantic idea. But as we know from this piece, what you may be able to tell, that it's not as maybe sweet as a typical pastoral idyll might be, although it's still a kind of a loving piece. It shows a little bit more difficulty in daily life, and we see that here, right? So she's walking her way back from either the basilica, right, where the basilica near the hill where the Virgin appeared to Juan Diego, or maybe she's walking all the way back from Mexico City, which, as you saw from the original, that is a far, far away. So that indicates that, guess what? Life isn't all easy, right? But at the same time, it's still playful. She's got her two children with her. One is in her arms. The other one is carrying a bundle on his back as well. They're accompanied by a couple of dogs. So the wind is going. So it's not all awful. It's not like French realism, right? They're certainly not, when they're establishing their national identity, going to want to push that idea. But it's still rough. They're barefoot, right? They're having to walk barefoot on these long paths. Okay. So what we want to remember is that they're not just supposed to be scenery here, that they're an integral part of the composition, and in terms of our understanding of the whole of the piece. They're not just props here. So we do have something of a romantic relationship between human beings and the environment in which they exist. At the same time, like I mentioned, it's not all lovey. It's not all peaceful and easy, right? They aren't sitting on their behinds, drinking wine here, right? She is wearing indigenous garments. That is of note, certainly. And they are, again, in transit, right? It's a romantic, but it's also a difficult journey. So it's about the socioeconomic relationship between a people and their land. So what we have here is a piece that is a combination of national pride, kind of romantic notions, and depictions of daily life as well. It is considered a romantic masterpiece. As we get later into the 17th century, into the 19th century, I'm going to be mentioning a lot of isms. So romanticism, we've had realism, we have now impressionism. So what you want to do is you want to keep those isms straight. Okay. So you've already watched the video. It really is a beautiful piece. All right. I think that's it for this one. Fantastic. Make sure to check Google Classroom for the assignment, the forthcoming assignment.